especially in this time and in these circumstances, how have you been creative at all in the last couple of weeks?
Well, well, it depends what you what falls under the word creative. It's like I'm lucky. I live in a gar. I live I live to the south of Edinburgh in what we
Mm.
call the Shire, right? And I'm 15 minutes off walks in the hills of my own.
Okay.
I'm 15 minutes on a bicycle away from beaches, and I've got a really big garden, and I'm an avid gardener, and I've got a huge greenhouse that this afternoon is picking about 10 plants from
Okay.
20 different varieties of tomatoes to grow this year.
Okay.
And that's why the lockdown's been, in a perverse way that I'm actually enjoying it,
Okay.
because normally this place is like a bus station, you know.
Hmm.
So there's always people coming through here. There's always people popping in and visiting and things, and it's really quiet. So we're able to get on with things. And one of the things that I found from this whole COVID-19 thing is my rhythm of life has just changed.
Right.
We've gone from being a tango to being a waltz.
So
And
slowly.
I don't know about you, but I found this thing where normally when I'm doing something in the back of my mind, I'm doing work A, right?
Mm.
And I'm thinking about B and C while I'm doing A, you know? And,
Mm.
I'm thinking, well, I'm doing this and I've got this to do and I've got that to do. I've stopped doing that now.
Right.
And I found myself, I'm getting involved in piece of work A and I'm enjoying it and I'm doing it correctly and I'm not bothered about this. You don't feel there's time constraints,
Right.
And I think it's slowed my life down and I like that. I'm more relaxed, I'm more chilled out, and I'm doing things that, normally get pushed to the side. I mean, like cleaning out the back of the garage, the workshop,
Mm.
or like, going into the greenhouse. And rather than just throwing stuff in a corner, it's like, let's put it in the right places. But I
It's
mean,
very satisfying, I suppose, to kind of get
yeah,
those little things done.
yeah. I mean, on one creative side, I'm putting a garden in order. This is
Mm.
the perfect time to be putting my seed in and, getting everything organized. And at the same time, I'm still working on the Weltschmerz album. I mean, I'm
Right.
not writing, but Callum Malcolm, my producer, I mean, he went away to Italy on the Friday and
Wow.
woke up the next day with the country in lockdown.
Wow.
Right? He woke up and went,
Wow.
"Where is everybody?" Right?
Okay.
And he was out there for a week because he's got like a side studio, like a really small
Mm.
mixing studio, and he goes out there just to chill out.
And
And
he's
then
okay,
something,
I hope.
yeah, and he had to come back, and he went into 2 weeks quarantine. But thankfully, he's got his studios in his house. He's
Mm.
over the river from me, right? There's a big
Right.
river Forth. I mean, you could go on a boat across to his studio, right? Which I choose not to do, right? But he was working in on the Weltschmerz mixes, and he
Mm.
said exactly what I said just now. He was in a position where he said, "I'm being meticulous. I'm taking my time. I don't feel there are kind of rigorous time constraints or like deadlines. And we're just using it." So we're all working remotely now, obviously. So he sends mixes across to me. I listen to them on the speakers in front of the computer. I burn the disc. I take them through to my KEF speakers through in the main room.
Mm.
My main co-writer, Steve Vancis, he's down in Birmingham. He's in lockdown down there.
Okay.
He's working on the live the live tapes from the Clutching at Straws thing. He's listening to
Yeah.
mixes. We're looking at doing 13 Star remaster. So it's like, you do that. I'm up here and I'm putting together the end sections of Weltschmerz. We're putting
Mm.
together a brand new mail order system, which is kind of rejigging the website. So there's lots of things that we're doing. I mean, by no means, right?
Right.
And the irony of all irony is, right, Warner's have got the remaster of Script for a Jester's Hero, right?
Okay.
And we were supposed to do a tour. We had the March tour, which we started off on the 13th of March, Friday the 13th of March, right? We started the tour, for fuck's sake, right? And we had all these script albums that were the vinyls that we were going to sell on the tour. And we got them early from Warner's because they
Mm.
knew we were going on tour. And then I'd bought all my tour t-shirts for the tour. And of course, we only did one show in Aberdeen and then everything fell apart, right?
Sure. Sure.
So now I'm sitting here and we've got the mail order system, and the mail order system is keeping us alive. There's only my wife, Simona, who's in charge of the whole mail order kind of office stuff. My mother, who's 87, who's in a little
Okay.
room at the back, who we are very, very careful with at the moment. She is in her own isolation within isolation, right? And she packages things, she puts CDs in boxes. So it's a real family business, right?
Okay.
But the irony of all irony is that, you know, at this moment in time, we don't need money from the government. You know, yes, I lost money on the tour, but it didn't kill me. And, you know, the irony is that the first Marillion album is saving my ass at the moment. You know, well, who would have believed that?
Yeah,
you know,
who would have thought? All those...
the first Marillion album is actually saving my ass on mail order at this moment in time. And Weltschmerz, and Weltschmerz, we've had to move to September.
Right.
Because we couldn't trust the border controls, we couldn't trust the freight. We appreciate that, you know, in the factory and in the manufacturing plant in Czechland, there are people, there are real people working, putting this together. And, you know, people get ill and it's like shifts change. And we said, like, you know what, let's just de-stress the whole situation. And let's put the album out in September and just work our way. We deliver all the different bits and pieces in July, which means, you know, we can, because we've had to readjust because we were on the Blu-ray version of the deluxe version of Weltschmerz. We were going to film the new songs played live in Edinburgh, and of course the Edinburgh show went. So we've had to kind of rethink how we're doing it. I was to do an interview with an English comedian called Will Smith, and he was to come up here to do the interview on the album, you know, for the Blu-ray. And of course he can't do it, so we're trying to work a way to do that. The videos we've got, we're putting 4 promotional videos on the Blu-ray. Man with a Stick was done in 2017. Then we've done the Weltschmerz one, which is out now, which you've probably seen. And then we've got Garden of Remembrance. We shot. The director drove up from England on the 24 hours before the shutdown happened. He drove up, and we filmed scenes here that he took back to go into the post-production suite down in Colchester. And then the last video, which was going to be like an old cast ensemble, we're having to change that. So now we're doing a Japanese style animation and put me in it with green screen, you know. So it's you know, it's you're adjusting. I'm used to it, you know.
Yeah, I mean? You're making adjustments. You're thinking of creative ways to kind of still be able to be productive in a way.
Yeah, and then, you know, we grow our own vegetables here, you know, and you know, I've got a 29-year-old daughter who used to take the piss out of me. Dad, you're a prepper. You're a prepper. I says, yeah, you know. My mum and dad brought me up. Well, you always have a cupboard with tins in it, you know, and I've always had that thing, you know. I always have that little cupboard, and when I go down the stores in the last years, you know, you always buy an extra tin of beans or like some dried pasta or whatever, and you put it away in the cupboard, and then suddenly it's like this it, and I'm okay, you know. It's like,
I'm prepared. I'm good.
Yeah. And I said to my daughter 3 years ago, I said, darling, Tara, you need to learn how to grow vegetables, right? And she goes, Dah! And now it's like, oh, can I get salad? Can you send me salad? You know?
Well, this is the first time I have a garden. I've moved a couple months ago, and this is the first time I have a garden. I'm thinking of kind of planting some stuff, some tomatoes and that kind of stuff.
It's easy. All you need, I mean, for example, like you just need a container. Go down the supermarket, buy some compost, where they always sell compost in the supermarkets now, and then put some salads in. 3 weeks, you've got rocket, lettuce, you know, you've got greens, proper greens, fresh greens. And I've got my carrots in, I've got onions in, I put garlic in last autumn. I've got potatoes going in the next 2 days. I mean, you know, we have it's a big garden, and if we really wanted, we could be self-sufficient.
Okay.
And my wife is brilliant at pickling, so we've got beetroot and gherkins, and you know, she's German, so it's like she knows the pickling trade, you know. So it's like, you know, so yeah, we're okay. So I don't get uptight about it. I mean, when you switch on the news at night, it's crazy. I mean, it is like another world. I mean, it's like it's like watching a really bad 1970s science fiction film, you know.
In the early stages of the epidemic kind of breaking out. Yeah.
But I mean, you know, we saw it coming. I mean, when we went into rehearsals, you know, before rehearsals, I was aware. I mean, luckily, we only had 12 UK shows. We were supposed to be going out in April and May, right? But for the big European tour, and we moved that to October, November because of Brexit, because there was so many questions about Brexit. We just went, I can't deal with this. Well, let's move it. And luckily, because I moved the big European tour to October, November, it's now sitting, you know, on the outside, and you know, fingers crossed, touch wood, please help me, you know, that tour will go ahead. We've lost one festival in Portugal, but the other festivals in July and August might be okay. But if they're not, they're not. You know, I hate the way the media go, when is this going to end? When is it going to be over? And it's like, let's just sit here and wait, you know? I mean, like I said, I sincerely feel for people that are living in flats, people that are living in boxes in Milan or Madrid or Barcelona or Berlin or New York or Michigan or wherever. I mean, I am lucky and I'm privileged and humbled by the fact I have the situation I have, you know? Sure. But I mean, you know, it's thrown up a lot of questions about how we live, and it's thrown up a lot of issues that we should have been addressing a long time ago. You know?
Right, and what you mentioned earlier with kind of the peace of mind that the kind of this social distancing almost gives us, that tells us, I suppose, something about how we live as a society, like you say, and kind of we see now that if there are certain problems that need fixing, that there is a way to do it, but we have to do it. And I think in earlier years we heard, well, there's no way to do that, and now the necessity is high enough that we can do it.
Exactly. So, and I think there's a lot of, I mean, I always look for silver clouds. I've always been like that.
Sure.
You know, I mean, I've always kind of, you know, I've dealt with some huge problems in my life, you know, and you know, I've never been the sort of person that goes, oh no, fetal position in the corner. I don't do that. You know, if you lie on the floor, you're going to take a kicking. You know, you've got to get up and find a way to deal with it, find a way around it, find a way over it, under it, you know, whatever. And that's kind of the way I've always approached my life. And, you know, and I see that in society. There's good things coming out of this. Number one, I'm a socialist, right? I mean, my politics are left wing. Right? Not extreme left wing, but they're to the left.
No, but I read that you read Noam Chomsky and those kinds of. You're inspired by those kinds of people. So yeah, I get where you're where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think we're seeing the sick gift of the Chicago boys. I mean, you know, that whole capitalist philosophy where, you know, government should be small and everything should be privatized. We're now seeing that curse coming back at us, right? You know, when we're looking at making ventilators, when we're looking at masks, when we're looking at PPE suits, it's like, where are they made? They're made in China, right? They're made, everything's made somewhere else because the workforce is cheaper, you know? And we've sacrificed our
self-sufficiency in a way.
Yeah. We've sacrificed, you know, when we should be creating jobs here, you know, because of companies and stock shares and stock payouts, they've moved it to where they can make it cheaper and make more profit, right? And now we're paying the price for this, right? Because it's like, you know, when you're turning around to China and saying, we want more ventilators, and it's like, by the way, we've got our own problem, you know? And this is what it is. It's a global problem. And I think the globalization of our economies has been drawn into question. The global trade has been called into question on this. But there's other beautiful things that are happening. Number one, right? I mean, in the UK, and I think in general, our health services, which are taken for granted, right? People are now turning around and going, wait a minute, why is the health service underfunded? Why do we not have this? Why do we have oxygen pipes in hospitals that are too small? You know? And again, it was the profit motive that has caused this, right? And we're having to re-examine it and reappreciate our frontline health services.
Right.
And I think there's going to be an investment. You know, we've got to prepare. I mean, we ran tests in the UK. I mean, we know there were tests run about a year, 2 years ago on if a pandemic happened, what would we do? And it failed back then. Nobody learned from the mistakes that were created, or the mistakes that were observed in those test runs. You know, and everybody just went, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. It's not all right. Right. So, I mean, as far as, you know, we deal with health services, I mean, you know, in the UK, the NHS is free. Right. And I think we've got to find a way around that. We've either got to have people pay more into the National Health Service, which goes against their taxes, et cetera, but also we've got to rely less on private companies, corporations, basically doing what the government should be doing, you know?
Right.
And
Well, I find, and this is just my own opinion, but I find especially in these kinds of instances, then the government kind of looks towards the population to make a change, but then they should be the ones who kind of initiate those things. For instance, now with the health workers, like you say, I mean, now everybody's like, okay, they need more money, they need more funding, but I mean, they needed that 5 years ago. It was
Yeah,
obvious. So it's
yeah,
a
but
weird,
it's profit.
but
It's short,
but that's a silver
short
lining,
term.
hopefully.
Yeah, short-term thinking and the profit motive. You
Mm,
know, as soon as you put private companies into a supply system, right, that the government used to be in control of, that
mm,
that company has got a profit motive,
right,
and you know there are elements all the way down the line when you put something in the private sector. There are profit motives. Profit would be at the railways, be it the post office, whatever. And as soon as you have the profit thing, people are trying to cut corners to make more money, right? And
right,
that's why nationalizing a lot of services is a good idea, because as you just said, you know, when the government is in a position where it's against the wall, then it turns around to the public and says, "Oh, help, 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 help."
right.
It's like they should be in control of that, and they
Mm,
should be, you know, we should be have been in that position before where the public is more involved, which is
right,
why we vote, right?
right,
Uh,
exactly.
but I mean,
But
there's other things. There are other things that I take positives from.
well,
You know,
one,
I had a smile on my face when I saw I saw footage on TV from Venice, and it's watching fish swimming in the canals of
right,
Venice, and watching clear water, and watching the Google Maps and seeing countries that suddenly you couldn't see because of the pollution and the smog, that suddenly you can see detail. You know,
mm,
so I mean, I think from the climate change perspective, you know, and our entire position about addressing the planet, I think that is going to take a big leap forward, because people are going to
yeah,
say, we stop, the planes aren't flying now, look what's happening. And also with office workers, people are going, well, everybody's working at home, and there's a lot of industries that are still continuing to work,
mm,
right, with people working home. So why do we need offices? Why do
yeah,
we need all these commuters? Why do we need all this traffic in cities when people can work from home? Which
right.
means, okay, government, maybe we should start looking at a far better broadband service, and taking the internet out to
Mm.
outlying places to bring them in and make it a fairer, more equal, more even playing field. You know?
Yeah, that's the hope that at least out of this kind of tragedy in a way that there are some things that will inspire change.
Yeah,
That's the hope.
I
But
think I think we have to do that. We have to look at what's happening around us now and look at the benefits. I mean, I love the fact that communities are coming together. You know,
mm,
you don't have this dog eat dog, you know, attitude that's kicking about. People are taking care of older people. You know,
mm,
people are looking after others. You know, there's definitely a more community sense within our
mm,
society, and it has brought society together, which can only be a positive thing, because I think in
yeah.
the last 10 years we've been getting deliberately blown apart, you know,
Well,
because it
that's
suits
yeah,
this government.
no, but that's a very interesting point because I think you came up with the idea for Weltschmerz quite a while ago. So what is
Yeah,
it like then having that notion of Weltschmerz kind of expanding even over the last couple of years since you thought about that?
yeah. I'm scared that maybe in a few months they might burn me at the stake. It was weird. I mean, you know, my wife's German, and you know, we've
Mm,
been together since about 2011. And I spent, you know, I speak a bit of German. I'm not fluent, but I speak a bit of German. And I was living in Karlsruhe
mm,
for about maybe 3 months, 4 months a year.
okay.
So I was, you know, round about that Germanic culture, right?
Hmm.
And I love words. I mean, you know, and something that's very important, right, is I am a writer who can sing, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a singer who can write. And there is a big difference in that, right? And so I'm always attracted by words and the sound of words and the meanings of words and how you use it and sculpt it, you know, and bring them together. I mean, the same way as a piano player will sit down and bring chords and notes and minors and majors and things. I do that with words, right?
Mm,
And Weltschmerz is a word, you know, at the time in 2015 when it kind of came to me,
mm,
you know. I was watching the news then, and I was watching the climate change. I mean, I refer to climate change and the planet on Feast of Consequences, and
mm,
especially on the Blind to the Beautiful song, right? And, you know, that kind of moved forward. It was still in my way of thinking. And Weltschmerz seemed to encapsulate how I was feeling. I was angry. I felt numb. I felt frustrated.
Right.
You know, I felt overwhelmed. And I think that is a very important word, overwhelmed, because I think a lot of people feel overwhelmed by everything that's happening in the world at the moment. And I didn't want to take the Weltschmerz theme and basically deal with big corporations, big business, governments. You know, what I wanted to do was bring it down to people. My best writing is done through, it's about observational writing, about characters, and I want to strip it all down to characters who were dealing with the world today.
Is it fair to say that your writing has always been more character driven rather than kind of from the top down way of looking at it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, big picture stuff, you know, I have done in the past, but I mean, I prefer characters. I prefer dealing with people, you know, and it's easier to invest in people in the same way as a script writer. You know, when you're developing characters, you always invest something of yourself. And it was interesting that, you know, Weltschmerz got off to, Weltschmerz got off to a kind of strange start because 2015 was when the crystals started to form, you know, and then in 2016 I was hit by a baseball bat. Okay. And that my father died in the May when I came back from the tour, from the farewell to childhood tour. The beginning of 16, my father was basically, he was drifting away from us. Okay. And he died in May. And, you know, I thought, you know, okay, my father's died. It was traumatic, but I thought that I would move through it a lot faster than I did. And I found myself in the garden like 7 months later going, where did that year go? And that was why the garden became a kind of special place for me, because it was a place where I was healing. I had, you know, my mental health had been greatly affected, but I mean, became aware of my own age. I became aware of my limitations. I had a big spine operation in December. I had badly torn tendons in my shoulder I was dealing with. There was another operation. And I became aware of my mortality. And that was when I wrote the Man with a Stick song, which was basically a song about dealing with my father. But the first one I wrote was Little Man What Now, which was on the Parley with Angels album. And that was very much, you know, one man trying to come to terms with his life. Waverley Steps was a song that was about male mental health. That it was about somebody who had kind of like a personality disorder, whatever, bipolar, and it was about a male suicide. And at the time, you know, there was a lot of, I became involved. I started to subscribe to CAMS, the Campaign Against Living Miserably, which is all about male mental health. Right. And I became very entranced by a lot of these subject matters, and that led to the Weltschmerz album building. But I mean, 16 was, like I said, my father. 17, I had health issues, and you know, even last year, I mean, I was in hospital twice with sepsis. Okay. And one of the songs on the album called Grace of God was basically the ideas came to me in the hospital. You know, that was when, you know, my eyes work like cameras, you know, and I pick up things, I observe things, and I store them. You know, they go into a folder at the back of my head, and then when I start putting a song together, I access those folders and I bring them together, start to make the movie, because that's what I do. I make movies for people's ears, you know. Right.
And is this something that you had to develop, or was this kind of from the get-go your way of writing? Did you always have this visual element and kind of this storytelling element?
Yeah, I've always had it. I mean, way back in Marillion, I mean, you know, for example, I mean, even on Script for Jester's Tear, you know, a song like Chelsea Monday, you know, I was walking around the Chelsea area and looking at people looking in shop windows at 2 o'clock in the morning when I was on my way back from bars or whatever, right? And it was like young people, and even back then in 1983, you know, there were the haves and the have-nots. Sure. And, you know, Chelsea Monday is about a young girl who commits suicide, you know, and about how she goes there down to the big city for the dream and can't find it. And, you know, she basically goes off a bridge, you know. Right. And, You know, so yeah, way back then I was writing, character-based lyrics. And I love the songs, and that's why I work so well with Steve Vances, who's worked with me since 13th Star.
Right.
And we had, when we sit down and write, I say, this is what I want to write about. This is the story. I pitch the story to him in the same way as a screenplay writer would to a director. And then I go, this is what I'm trying to do. This is how I feel the music should be. And then he'll come up, he'll go, I've got this bit. And he'll sit down with me and he'll write. I go, what do you think of this? And I'll go, yeah, that works, and this works in this section. And then we bring it all together, right? And then we paint, join things together. And it was the way that Steve and I worked on this album was very similar to how I used to work with Marillion, when they used to trust me, right?
Right.
And and he trusts me to basically deliver the story, because for me, as I said, I'm a writer who can sing, so the words are very important to me. Sure. They're not just thrown on top of the music just to give you something on the top. The words rule, right?
Right.
So the story rules the song, right? And Steve accepts that, and that's why he understands, and that's why we have a good chemistry together. And on all the songs, and it doesn't matter how long they are, the song is as long as it takes for the story to be told,
Right. Well, this might be, I don't know if this is a good analogy, but I heard you talking about why you like gardening and the fact that you can plant the seed and watch it grow into something. And is it similar in terms of songwriting or writing lyrics, that you can start with the seed of an idea and it kind of turns into something?
Yeah, I mean, there's some of the songs. I mean, like I said, Grace of God, which is ironically, like I said, they will burn me at the stake, right? Grace of God was determined as being the opening song of the album 5 months ago, right? And we knew when we wrote it, this is the opening song of the album, right? And it was really strange. It was, that came from a conflict of ideas. I had to go in for MRI scans. I think one was for my shoulder, and I had a terrible shoulder injury it was a diving injury. I was in Cuba and I went into the water, and it was down near Guantanamo, the closest you could get to Guantanamo Bay without being shot. Right on the perimeter. Water, and it was a bit choppy. When we went down and we came out after the dive, the water was 2 meters, 3 meters up, and we had to get on the boat. And I went to get on the boat, I had to take my gear off, put my gear on the boat, and I went to get on the ladder, and the guy said, get on there as fast as possible. We need to get the fuck out of here, right? And I grabbed the ladder just as the boat took off on a big wave, and it wrenched my shoulder, and I ripped. And luckily, it was my last dive out of 35 dives in Cuba. Okay. But so I had to go for the MRI scan. And you go in the MRI scan, I don't know if you've ever had one, but they say, do you want to hear music? Do you want headphones to hear music? Because he said it's a bit loud in there. And I said, well, what you got? I said, well, we've got ABBA. And I went, no, forget it. I don't want to listen to ABBA. And I said, I'll just listen to it. So I lay in the machine, and it sounded like a Tangerine Dream album.
Okay.
And I've got this thing where I hear rhythms, and when I hear rhythms and I start to build, I can put things into the rhythms. I mean, I've always done that. When I hear rhythms, I really loved it because they could play any kind of weird rhythm, and I could find a way to put a melody or a stream of lyric in it. And I was sitting there going, this is great, right? And then I had to go back again, and I said to the guy, can I take my phone in to record it? And he went, no. He said, you take your phone in then there, it's going to completely fuck up, right? And he said, go to this website. And I came to the studio, and I was in the control room. My computer is at the back, and then we have the working area at the front. And I said to the guys, I said, I really want to use an MRI scanner like rhythm in this song, and I really want to use this somehow and to develop a song that's about hospital, about death and things. And I found the rhythm, and I sent it. I basically sent it from this computer to the computer at the front, and I said, listen to this. And I sent it. And not only was the rhythm of the computer in exactly the same as Robin Bolt, my guitarist, was putting a riff together, it was the riff fitted perfectly over the MRI scanner, and it was also in the same key, right? Well, and I just went, we have to do this. It's a second. And then that developed, and then there was I had the hook line, and then I knew I had to take it somewhere else, and then it moved into another section that was about a little girl visiting her father in the hospital, and it was about all the people that I saw. And the song was called Grace of God because I was sitting there I was brought in an ambulance in a blue light, and I was an hour and a half of going seriously bad, right?
Right,
And
right.
then 2 days later, I'm sitting there going, I got through it. I'm alive, you know?
Mm.
And I was watching other people that were coming in, and it's like, whoa. And some of them were in bad shape. And it was like, there, but for the grace of God go I. And as soon as I thought that, it was in the folder. And then it became the hook line of the song. And then all the images started to crystallize around, you know, that idea. And it became a song about a guy who was coming through everything, you know, and basically surviving, you know.
I can imagine, because in the spirit that you mentioned, 16, 17, well, when you, 2016, 17, when you had these, well, when you were confronted with your own mortality, and
Yeah.
did it make you reflect a lot about what you've been through and what you've kind of overcome still be here in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, and it goes back beyond that. I mean, you know, when I do get, I mean, when I stop, my final tour is going to be in 2022 into 2023. And when I stop, I want to write. I want to be the writer. I don't want to be the singer anymore. I'm a realist, you know. I mean, I go out, you know, in Holland, I play great sizes of crowds, but I mean, you know, I'm never going to be playing that in every other country. And, you know, I don't want to be in a nightliner when I'm 65. I don't want to be, you know, having the shower in the gig and climbing on the bunk in the bus and waking up in the, you know, I don't want to do that. I love the 2 hours on stage, but everything else around it now is like is tough, you know. To get through the day is, you have to be careful, you know, and I just went, you know, I don't want to be doing this when I'm 65. I do not want to become a parody of myself, you know, singing Kaylee at 65-year-old for a bunch of older guys in the crowd. It's like, you know what? I've got other things to do. There's other things I want to do. I want to write screenplays. I want to write books. I want to write that autobiography, which is not going to be, you know, it reached #3. We did this big gig, we did this, we took these drugs. I don't want to write something like that. I want to write something that's far more literary than just a straightforward music autobiography. That's why I made the conscious decision to retire. And I made that decision in 2015, right? I mean, I went, you know, I've got a sell-by date, you know? And I went, okay, that's when I want to do the Farewell to Childhood tour. The last time I played Misplaced Childhood, I wanted to play that as an album, as an entirety. I wanted to do Clutching at Straws as an entirety. So we did the Farewell to Straws tour. On the tour that I'm taking out in the end of this year, and the one we started in UK, it's got the whole Vigil album, which is on its 30th anniversary, and Weltschmerz. And I like, you know, as you know, you talk about gardening, it's about shaping things, you know. I'm going out with my first solo album together with my last solo album on the same film. And in 2022, 23, what I would love to do as the farewell, the real farewell, is to do gigs and do 2 nights in every, pick out my favorite venues in Europe and do 2 nights. So basically, you know, rather than trying to find everything in a 2-hour set, I do 4 hours over 2 nights, and I mix all the songs up from all the different periods of my career, and that is my goodbye, right? And then, you know, and then I go into writing, then I go into gardening, and I develop other things. I do other things, you know. Music has changed.
New avenues to explore. But one thing about that, well, what you say, music has changed, and also kind of with the way it went with Marillion and some of the record labels. You earlier talked about kind of the quest for profit in a lot of corporations, and then in a way that has seeped into the music industry, I suppose, as well. So how much of that has affected kind of the creative, was that in essence kind of what ended up with Marillion? What was the biggest problem? Was it more on the creative side?
I think that the problem with Marillion was we became a really big band, and we were about to go into that super league, you know. And I wasn't enjoying it. You know, I mean, you know,
why not?
I just didn't enjoy it. I mean, I was playing the Ahoy, and you know, you were going in the Ahoy. It was a huge cavern, and you know, you did the sound check. You could see all these seats in front of you, right? And then, but when the people came in, you couldn't see them. You know, because when you walked on stage, you had 2 super troopers in your face all the time. You couldn't see further than 10 meters, right? And I like the communication with an audience. I mean, my favourite tour out of everything I've done was the Fishheads Club tour.
Okay.
Acoustic, playing to 300 people, 400 people, and you could talk to them. You could have conversations. When you're playing the Ahoy, when somebody from 5 meters out shouts something funny and you answer with something funny, the people at the back only hear one side of that conversation. The band were playing exactly the same set every night. It was the same solos, you know. And I walk around there, and you know, I was like just going on and performing for 2 hours, and that wasn't what I liked, you know. And then I'm coming off stage, and then I'm having to shake hands and glad hands. A lot of people that I didn't really want to meet, you know, and they're all drinking the wine and eating the food that were paid for by that gig. And then there was so many people that were making a lot of money off that band, and yet the band were not. You know, we were still going back home at the end of the tour going, how do we pay our mortgages? And we're playing at 12,000 people a night. We were badly managed, you know. Okay. And I didn't get into the music business for money. That was not what drives me. I mean, now we have a very small, you know, a very small outfit here, right? And, you know, like I said, my wife runs the mail order operation. You know, I come in, I can sign things, and we handle it and we can make a living. You know, our most expensive, most of our money, you know, if we, you know, our big spends go in the garden. I'm looking at a major raised bed project at the end of the year. Right. You know, the biggest amount of money I've spent in the last month was to buy new season tickets from a football club, Hibernian Football in Edinburgh, because their players need the money. And it's like, you know, and it's like, yeah, we'll buy the season tickets early to help the club. You know, I don't have security. I don't have a Mustang in the drive. I don't have a villa in France. I don't have a, you know, a hole up in Barbados or wherever. This is what we have. We have a home. We have a garden, and I like it like that. It's small and it's simple, and I enjoy it. With Marillion, it became too complicated, you know. And the demands on my personal life, the demands on my private life were high. It was detrimental to my health. And I left Marillion after making what I thought was the best album we made, was Clutching at Straws. And Clutching at Straws, you know, I mean, I gave a character called Torch, and I went, yeah, Torch is the character of the album. Torch was just a very loose construct for an excuse for what I was doing at the time. And, you know, I was not an alcoholic and I was not a drug addict, although some people tried to portray that because they had an agenda, right? And it was like, but with me, it was like, it was bad for my health. You know, the other four guys that I'd come up with that we'd made everything happen with, right? You know, we were strangers to each other now. Everybody was looking after themselves. There was no gang mentality, and I missed that, you know. And I hated working with committees. You know, a committee is just, you know, when you take a great idea with a lot of energy in it and you put it into a committee, by the time that idea sees maybe the light of day, the energy's gone out of it, it's been changed, you know. Compromise, yeah, you have to compromise to some degree, but you know, it was like there was too many egos involved, you know. And I just went, I can't deal with this anymore, and I left it. And I went through a period where I tried to duplicate that in my own way, and it didn't work. And you know, and then I realized what made me happy, right? And this makes me happy, you know. I like to be, you know, I'm talking to you. If I was in Marillion, it was like, you know, we'd have 20 minutes, you know.
Right.
And it's like, you know, we can do what the hell we want here. And, you know, and it's the same way, in the same way as my album. If I was with a major record company, I would be under incredible pressure, as Marillion were. Marillion were under a lot of pressure after Clutching. We want another Kaylee. We want another Incommunicado. We want another Lavender, you know. And I didn't like that. You know, I didn't, you know, I write what I want to write and I do what I want to do, you know, and I've got nobody telling me you can't do this, right? For example, if I was on a major record company, I could never afford to make an album like this because the A&R guy would be saying, you can't have real strings because they're too expensive. You can't have a nude player. You can, you know, we need to have this album out now because the machine is ready to take your album, right? I don't have that. This is, you know, the last album I put out was Feast of Consequences in 2012, right? And I'm not the sort of person, I will not, you know, some bands go, well, wait a minute, it's 2 years, we better get a bit of plastic out. We've got to get an album out. I don't, you know, it's fuck it. I don't need to do that. The album will come out when the album comes out, when it's ready, when I feel it's ready. And, you know, my producer, Callum Malcolm, who's a genius, I love working with this guy. And sometimes he says to me, he said, well, what's the budget for this? I said, well, there is no real budget. It's like, does it sound good and can I afford it? You know, now I'm not thinking, well, I have to sell so many albums to pay this back. It's like, let's make the album and then we'll deal with selling the album after. Let's make the album as great as we can possibly make it. And that's why Weltschmerz has taken so long, because it needs to be where it is. And as I said, I left Marillion with the best album that I ever made with them, and I want to finish my solo career with the best album ever made. So, because in both instances, right, after I left Marillion, I created the biggest problem ever, because everybody went, what would have happened next? You know, everyone, what would the next album have sounded like? Because this one was great. And that's what I want to do with Weltschmerz, you know.
Okay. You want to keep them wanting more, in a sense?
No, I just want to leave it on a really high benchmark. Okay. You know, rather than go and delivering a piece of shit, you know, like, for example, you know, some bands, you know, they do a crap album and they split, and then you know why they split, because they did a crap album.
Right.
It's like, you know, I want to leave a great album so people go, what would you have done next? And what I'm doing next is I'm writing like a proper writer, right? And then, you know, maybe it'll fall flat on its face. I don't know, but I don't care. Like I said, I don't have an expensive lifestyle, so I don't have security guys and cameras all around my house or whatever. You know, it's like, you know, I don't have huge overheads. You know, we have a very simple way of dealing with things. And in fact, you know, if Weltschmerz became a huge hit and everybody went, wow, this is the best thing that's ever happened, then it could be a nightmare for me, because I'm going to have to deal with it. You know,
right. But from a creative standpoint, then, because like you say, it's all about the song and the art comes first, and it'll take as long as it takes. But are you very hard on yourself in a way? Are you very do you expect a lot from yourself in terms of what you write and with how you create those songs?
Lyrically, I am very, very hard on myself. Very, very hard. Okay. You know. There's never any fat on a lyric. You know, lyrics are condensed. I mean, you know, I have to self-edit. I mean, one thing I was very guilty of for the earlier part of my career was, you know, the words were sacrosanct, and you know, what I write has to go. Now I go, wait a minute, the song, this doesn't fit the song. You have to still think about the rhythm of the song, and I don't mean the rhythm as in the actual bam 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 beat. You have to think about, you know, am I holding this for too long? In the same way as when you're working on a movie, is the scene playing too long? You know, I was still holding the attention. But that is a storyteller's thing. In the same way as when you just tell a story, you can go spend too long in one area and you can lose contact with the person. So you're aware that you have got you are writing something that you're trying to keep somebody entertained within, you know. And you know, and you're working within that music vehicle, that song vehicle, you know, which again is why I'm looking forward to the freedom, you know, in the same way as you read Cormac McCarthy, you know, he just expands on and he just takes you into areas, and you know, it's just beautiful. You just let yourself. I'd like to write like that, you know. And it's Steinbeck, you know, the way that Steinbeck can illuminate on a story and deal with the detail. You can't do that within a lyric. And you have to self-edit. And there's been times on the Weltschmerz album where I went, I've got to get rid. I had 4 verses, all right? And I went, these 4 verses, it's too long, right? And I had to take the 4 verses and edit to get those 4 verses down to 2 that said what the 4 verses were doing, right? But it got across. But you had to allow the person to kind of, to allow the imagination to fill the gaps in, which is a good thing, you know. It's a good thing, I think, in any scope of writing. But I mean, it's. I mean, I am very tough on myself when it comes to lyrics. And with the music, it's like, you know, when I've got Steve Vancis, or I've got John Mitchell or Robin Bolt playing guitar, or Craig Blundell playing drums, you know, it's like there's something I was told a long time. There is no point in having a dog and barking yourself. Right, so why get a great drummer in and a great guitarist in and a great bass player in and sit around the studio and go, maybe you should change this? It's like they're doing what I'm doing. They're putting the best that they can input into this album. So why am I sitting there telling them what to do? So I give them a lot of freedom on the music side. With Callum, when it goes into the mixes, I'm a lot more on board, because at the end of the day, I mean, for example, when I worked with Stephen Wilson on Sunsets and Empire album, Steve came up and we put the music and lyric together and all the rest of it. And then Stephen kind of left us after that point. And he said, when he heard the Sunsets and Empire album, we went, I had no idea it was going to sound like that. He loved it, but he said, I had no idea that was where it was going, you know? And in the same way as, you know, that's what I do. That's what makes an album fish. You know, that's my style. And this album is like, I am so proud of this album. I mean, I'm frustrated that the album won't be out until September, but it's like, you know, but I mean, you know, this is the best thing that I've ever worked on. I mean, we've spent, because we've had the time and because it's been done over a long period, then we're in the situation where it's been tweaked and polished and carved and whittled, and you know, it's, you know.
Well, kind of to round off then, because you've worked on this album so long, and then it was kind of the end of this chapter of your life, and you're going into the next one. So having to delay that kind of closing of this chapter and going into the next one, is that difficult in a way that you kind of have to linger for a while, or can you enjoy this and kind of take this as a moment of reflection on your musical career in a way?
I mean, I remember when I wrote when Vigil in the Wilderness of Mirrors, my first solo album, was completed. That was finished in about July, August 1989. Right, and then we gave it to EMI, and everybody went, "This is great, this is amazing, what a fucking great solo album, first release solo album, blah blah blah." And I had to sit on it for 6 months, right, because Marillion had to have their album out first, right? And I'm sitting there watching the Marillion album come out, and I've got my album, and I'm going, you know, when is it? January, right? And I was very frustrated at the time, but it was a different era because it was pre-internet. You know, the way I look at it now is, you know, I'm sitting here doing an interview with you and you've never heard the album. And we're talking about it. So there's an expectation that is built, that we're building. You know, we're doing interviews on the internet. And this is what I'm doing. It's like, okay, well, the album was out in September, but, you know, Weltschmerz as a track is out now. The video's there. In June, the Garden of Remembrance video and track will be out. And Garden of Remembrance is, I mean, if the album is Weltschmerz, this is the zeitgeist.
Okay.
I mean, it's a poignant ballad that is just perfect for now, right?
Okay.
And then This Party's Over, which will be the next one, will come out before the tour. So there's a build. It's not that I'm doing nothing. This isn't like '89 where I sat there twiddling my thumbs, going like, you know, I'm able to work it and do things. And at the same time, we don't have to get what we call the assets together for July. So we've got time to get the artwork perfect. We've got time to get the mixing absolutely perfect. You know, we've got, you know, and, you know, yes, we could have had it out in July. And, you know, I'm sure it would have been brilliant. But we've got the time now to just adjust and build it, you know.
Well, that's the thing.
Take it, you know.
Was there any temptation to kind of change songs a little bit? Because I suppose with songwriting, you can go on forever. A song is never finished in a way. So once that decision came in, okay, we're gonna release in September. Was there any temptation of, oh, maybe we should change this part of this song, or maybe we should change it in that sense?
No, there's been nothing. I think because Steve Vancis and I spent so long putting them together. I mean, you know, when we were working in the studio, you know, we're sitting listening to it again. And as I said to you before, it's like, I mean, I am probably the biggest taskmaster. I mean, you know, if I'm hearing a mix back, you know, and my attention is diverted and I start thinking about something else during that mix, then it's wrong, right? And I know that. That's one of my identification points. If I'm not sitting there and just listening, if my attention is diverted, it's wrong, because I'm not being pulled in. And if I'm not being pulled in, then I can't expect other people to be pulled in. You know. So when Steve and I go through it, and when we piece that stuff together, then we're already in that mode, and we go over it, and we will go, you know, and we make sure that it's tightened, it's edited, it's compressed. You know, it's 4 verses go down to 2. It's like, you know, this instrumental section is just a little bit too long. We need to just, I mean, one of the things with Steve and I on 30 Star, one of the things that that Steve learned was, I said, like, just because it's good doesn't mean you've got to have it all the time, you know? Because if you have a great melody or a great section, you know, to extend it, you're basically, you can lose the taste of it. You can lose the excitement of it, and just having a touch of it, makes people want more. And I think that's what you've always got to do, is you've got to leave people wanting to hear something more, and then they'll want to play again. And it's very much the same way as with this album. I mean, because I set out to make, I was like, let's make a double album, and we were looking at CD times. So we're going, we're going to write, double albums, 130 minutes or whatever, right? Or 70 minutes a CD.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was talking with Callum Malcolm, the producer. And I went, you know what? It's like, we've got great songs here, right? And we've also got 86 minutes of music, right? Now, 86 minutes of music is an old-fashioned double album, right? That is a double album. I mean, an original piece of vinyl, the most you could get on it was about 43 minutes, 44 minutes, right? And I thought, well, why are we going to make two CDs? And one of the things, when I hear a CD, if I'm listening to something after about 55 minutes or so, 60 minutes, no matter how good that album is, it's like watching the movie. It's like, The Irishman. I couldn't watch The Irishman in one sitting, right? And it's like,
I haven't watched it yet. It's too
good.
Much of a
It's good.
It's too much of it's an investment.
Yeah. It's a huge, and it's the same with an album. And I thought, you know what? Let's do two CDs of 44 minutes each, so that what is the good thing is you don't have to get up in the middle of the album to flip the vinyl over, but you're listening to 44 minutes of music, and I think that's enough. And if somebody wants to play CD2, then they play CD2. And if CD1's good, they want to play CD2, right? But they've got that break in it. They've got a physical and mental break away from the album, just for 5-10 minutes or whatever, right? Yeah. And it works, right? It works. And it's strange when I put all the track listing down for the two CDs, the track listings fitted perfectly with the double vinyl that we're going to be putting out. So I don't have to change the track listing on the CDs to the vinyl to accommodate. It fits perfectly.
So the flow is still perfect.
The flow is still perfect, because that's what, when you make an album, you're always you're designing a roller coaster. It is entertainment. Although it's your personal expression, although it's your art, you're still aware that you want somebody in the same way as when you tell a story, you're trying to keep them engrossed in that story, entertained and captured by that story. So when you put the tracks together, you're trying to take people on a ride, so it's, and I love it. That excites me, But in the same way as, when you're writing a book, I mean, that's a different challenge. But I mean, I know that, when I'm writing, when I'm writing big blogs that I'm always guilty of on Facebook, it's, when I write those big blogs, I'm aware that I'm still sculpting the words. I'm still trying to keep people entertained, and there is still a pattern. There's still a map there, So, yeah.
So final question then: have you thought about what you want to write? You talked about screenplays, or are there already kind of those seeds of ideas in your mind?
Yeah. I mean, there are files. There are files in here that I've got different ideas. I mean, there's a lot of the things in the autobiography that I can't write about, because I'd end up with a lawsuit on my ass. There's not enough people dead yet.
You have to wait a couple more years, and then perhaps.
That's what it is. I'm waiting on the autobiography because there's too many people got to disappear, right? But yeah, so I mean, I'm aware of all that as well, and there's a lot of folders in there with different ideas and things, and I'm sure that over the next couple of years, there's going to be more things coming. I mean, like I said, I mean, I don't have, I'm not rich. But I might have been, the lyricist and Kaylee, but I mean, I am not by any stretch of the imagination anywhere close to being a millionaire, right? I mean, I still have the same struggles as other people, And it's
like you said earlier, I mean, that's the riches wasn't what got you into music. That's not why you do it. It's for the creative process, I suppose. And as long as you are happy with what you're doing, then that's a lot more important, I suppose, than having a mansion or. Yeah,
I mean, as I said, I mean, if I was driven, if I was only financially driven, there would have been at least another 3 albums out between Feast of Consequences and this one. But I don't think they would have been as good, and I think, but I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist, right? But it's I'm not a perfectionist. I mean, I don't have, you know, those kind of issues, right? But, you know, at the same time, I want to be proud of something that I put out. You know, I don't want to. I mean, I don't really listen to my albums once I've made them.
Okay.
You know, I listen to them for the first, you know, when you listen to the mix, you know, after that, you know, every now and again you might go, you know, there's, you know, I might put on, like, for example, Rain Gods with Zippos or something and go, fuck yeah, and then that's when I go, I wish we'd done that differently, right? But I mean, you know, it's once it's done and it's out there, it's like it's out there, you know, and it's and then it's like you move on to the next thing, you move on, you know. Like I said, I mean, I'm kind of looking forward to the farewell tour. If I can do that format and have 2 nights in every one of my favorite venues, that's going to be fun, and it has to be fun, and it has to, you know, you can't, you know, and anybody that's in the music business, you can't just do it for the money, you know. I mean, the reason you get involved in music is you want to express yourself, you want to say things, you want to entertain people, you want to kind of, you know, get people to think along the same way lines as you think sometimes, you know, and that's why I do it. That's why I work, and that's why I am who I am, you know.
Yeah, I think
yeah.
On that note, that's a beautiful note to end on, I suppose.
Yeah.
So, Derek, hopefully we can near September we can do this again for maybe another kind of catching up to see how everything's going and to see how you're coping with releasing that last album.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want you to hear it. I think.
Yeah,
I know. I mean, nobody's doing. I mean, Callum, a producer, played it to some of his friends who are weren't Fish fans, right? But the music people, you know, and you know, he played some of the tracks to them, and they just said nobody's doing this now. Nobody does this nowadays, you know. This is it's the ultimate expression of progressive rock. I mean, progressive rock means for me, it means you can do whatever the fuck you want. If you want to put a folk element in, or a Middle Eastern element in, or you want to rock it up, or you want to do a ballad, you do what the fuck you want. There's freedom. You know, I'm not like in Def Leppard. I'm not Beyonce. You know, where you're ruled by kind of, this is what everybody expects you to do. I can do the unexpected because I'm allowed to, right? Yeah. And, you know, like I said, right at the start of this album, I said, I want real strings, your proper strings, right? Proper brass sections. And all this has been thrown in, and the sonic landscapes. Like I said, I'm making movies for people's ears. That's what I'm doing. You know?
Excellent. Derek, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Cool. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, and hopefully, like I said, we can do this again in a couple of months.
Yeah.
And I hope you stay safe.
Yeah. Watch what you do.